Yo, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to this brand new episode of Hockeytown Rundown. You're here with us, your beautiful hosts, once again, Carlo and Zach. Carlo, what is up,
Yo,
my dude?
what is up? What is good? Happy belated 4th to you, my American friend. How was your weekend?
Happy belated Canada Day to you too, my Canadian friend.
Yes. They really should just figure this out and do it on, give everybody 2 days off and do one for Canada Day, one for July 4th, and everybody gets, whatever, Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday, and we just have a huge shebang.
I just vote that all of the North America, it all should just be a week off. Why not? Why not?
Yeah, we deserve it. At this point, there's so much craziness going on these days that everyone just deserves a week off.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And fortunately, you guys are joining us here on this brand new episode. Once again, we truly do appreciate it. If you guys have not already, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and then hit that notification bell if you are viewing or listening to us on YouTube. If you're over on Spotify or Apple, you can go ahead and rate us the 5 stars and then hit that follow button. That truly does help us out along in our journey on providing you guys the great and amazing content that we believe that we are putting out there. You can always find us on the big social media platforms as well as Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and even Threads. Yes, we are on all of those. We're trying to put out as much content as we can during this offseason with free agency. Based on the thumbnail, yes, Steve Yzerman, what can you do? Work your magic to make a trade. And we will be talking about that, about how Steve Yzerman can help improve this team after free agency. And everyone's gone, Carlo. It was pretty quick. It seems like that all the good players signed before, they were traded before free agency, July 1st hit. All the big names went right away, minus Nikolai Ehlers. We will talk about some of those bigger names as well. And Carlo, at this point, with me rambling, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. And to start off, let's just start with the fact that the Red Wings now officially have a 23-man roster with some pretty interesting additions. And talking about some of those players, to Detroit Red Wings in order, they signed players like Ian Mitchell for defense, Jacob Bernard-Docker, defense as well, James Van Riemsdyk over on the winger side, John Leonard, another winger, and then you have Mason Appleton. They have him listed as a center, Carlo, and I do want to put this out there that he only put up 22 faceoffs last season, so I'm very confused on the fact that he is labeled as a center. But
really? I thought he was a right winger.
So that's where we're going to place him, right? And so because of that, I don't see a reason why we would place him as a center. But while we're talking about him, let's just jump into some of the free agents that we signed. And let's start with Mason Appleton, who did sign a 2-year deal.
Wait a second here. Mason Appleton. That's Zach's first one of the day, folks. That's Zach's first one of the day.
Dang it. All right. Mason Appleton, a 2x$2.9 million deal that comes out to being $5.8 million. That's about 3% of your cap. He is coming over from the Winnipeg Jets organization.
Yeah.
Just this past season with the Winnipeg Jets, in 71 games played, he had 10 goals, 12 assists for 22 points. And then the season before that, in 23, 24, and 82 games, he had 14 goals, 22 assists for 36 points. This is exactly what you're looking for in a bottom 6 winger that can come in slightly cheap. It was a slight overpay, I guess, but comparison to someone like Vladimir Tarasenko, who was traded for future considerations, absolutely nothing. Is this an upgrade? I believe it's an upgrade. Personally, to me, just based on the contract front, and I feel like we actually know what we're going to get out of a Mason Appleton, who is only 29 years old, so he's still technically in his prime. But your thoughts on a Mason Appleton?
I actually really don't mind it. I don't hate it, and I actually kind of like it. What I did was I watched a couple of videos and I went to kind of like Jets Twitter, if you will, you always get the accurate feel and vibe from a team or a player leaving a team when you actually go and check out that fan base's reactions. And listen, Mason Appleton is not going to throw and put in a bunch of pucks in the net. That's not his game. But the one thing that stood out to me that a lot of the Winnipeg Jet fans said, whether it be on like different YouTube videos or just the move itself being announced, he's a dog. He's another dog. Like, his work ethic is unreal. You know, you look at his stat line, nothing sexy. There's literally nothing sexy about Mason Appleton, unless, of course, you find the thrill and you think back checking is sexy. I mean, I kind of do. I think that's a huge part of the game. And he just seems like he's, based off the reaction of people, like, everyone loved the vibe that he brought. I feel like he's going to be, and this, call it a hot take, but I feel like he's going to be what we wanted Christian Fischer to be.
The glue guy.
The glue guy, but somebody who, like, his plus minus over the course of his career is actually not bad. Like, it looks like he's got, that's an area that he's really worked on throughout his career. So I'm really eager to see where he's at, like, this coming season at 29. If he's 29 or 30 coming into the season, we don't know. But the resounding thing that I've heard is he's a dog, hard on the puck. And you know what? That's the things we need to be harder to play against. And nothing's really a secret. Like, Steve Yzerman brings in people that are truly going to make you, hopefully, harder to play against. And for me, that's a box checking move. You know, one thing that I said, of course, while we all want the top 4 D-man, we all want that top 6 forward, specifically the top line forward, which we'll get into later. You know, who the heck's playing with Larkin and Ray? But the other thing that was a huge box checker was, we got to really beef up that bit. I don't want to say middle 6, but I guess bottom 6. That really, really needs to be beefed up. I think he brings that. Seeing is believing, folks. You know how it is. I hope I'm not dead wrong on this, but to answer your question and to wrap up my little take on Appleton, I think that it's going to be a good thing for us because he is going to be super hard on that puck based off of the reactions that I've been seeing.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is the type of player who probably fit that mold even with the Winnipeg Jets, right? Just based on looking at their current lineup situation. I mean, their top line is Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, and then it's Gabriel Velarde. Their second line is Cole Perfetti, Jonathan Taves, and Gustav Nyquist. So he was right around there in that bottom 6 and middle 6 range, right? And so that's what Red Wings fans could probably expect out of someone like Appleton. He shoots right. He's 6'2", 194 pounds. So he's already got that man strength and he's already got that solid build, right? So it's not going to be a small third line, right? And so for Detroit Red Wings right now, it's projected that third line will be James Van Riemsdyk, who we will touch on. It is JT Compher. We moved it over to Andrew Kopp for obvious reasons. We concur with fans that JT Compher is best for the 4C, with Andrew Kopp being the 3C, right? So your third line is James Van Riemsdyk, Andrew Kopp, and Mason Appleton. And James Van Riemsdyk, he's not a small guy either. He's 6'3", but not trying to jump too far ahead on him. But yeah, Mason Appleton, I really do believe that this is a player that can put himself in the middle 6, right? He can be a top 6 winger for you. Is that the best option? The sexiest option, like Carlo mentioned earlier? More than likely not. We still are looking for someone who's more on the Alex DeBrincat, Lucas Raymond tier type of winger spot, right? But for this type of contract and the type of play that he brings and what Jets fans that you mentioned said, yeah, I'm very pleased with this deal. I don't think that this really hurts anyone. And Carlo, let's talk about, some of the other forwards assigned. I mean, Nikolai Ehlers, he signed a 6-year, $8.5 million deal. Mikhail Granlund, 3 years, $7 million for each year. Even someone like Christian Dvorak was able to get $5.4 million for 1 year. P.S. Suter, $4.125 million for his next 2 years. Tanner Jeannot, this is probably by far the worst one. Boston Bruins, what are you doing? 5 years, $3.4 million. So getting someone like a Mason Appleton for 2 years at $2.9 million, Steve did a really good job with this, right? You didn't sacrifice anything. You didn't hurt your long-term future. And this is a guy that you told probably, hey, there's going to be opportunity in the middle 6. It'll come down to injuries or just play based on coaching, right? And you're not really blocking any of the young guys from being able to come up either, whether if that's short or long term, right? So I'm very pleased with this addition in a Mason Appleton. I can't say his name for whatever reason. The Sunday Scaries are getting to me today, but it does kind of suck noticing and realizing that when it comes to free agency for the Detroit Red Wings, Carlo, that this technically is the centerpiece right now for Steve Yzerman. Are we pleased about that?
So I think yes. He didn't go and sign Tanner Jeannot. Like, he didn't go and make these crazy deals. And I think he's being very careful with his cap space right now. I think if anyone knows that people are if we're upset with Kop's deal, Comfort's deal, Sherrod's deal, you don't think Steve is? Like, these guys haven't really held up their end of the bargain as to when the deal was signed, right? So if we're upset about it as fans, I gotta believe that Stevie Y is upset about it too, to a degree. I mean, he's a lot more professional than we are, so there's that. But I think he's being very careful with how he spends his money, and he's being very careful with how much term he gives out. And the fact that we got out of this UFA season with what we did, no overpays, and sort of that Moneyball type of approach being taken on the players that he brought in, I would say this is a success. Yes, I'm pretty happy with this because we have ammunition to go and make a move still or two. And frankly, there might not even be a move made in the next week or two. There might be, and I hope there is. But worst case scenario, guys, like we're gonna have a good amount of money for trade deadline, and there's a lens that I look through where it's like I wonder if like we go out this season with this roster, it's going to be tinkered with quite a bit to kind of find the chemistry and balance between the four lines. And obviously you got to see how those four lines roll. But like, then you get to like a trade deadline and it's like, is he just waiting to see where we get to at that point? Because if we're flirting with that wild card spot, is he going to go out and pull the trigger on something big to take us over and into the promised land? Like, that's an angle that I've been looking at too. But I will go on record to say I would much rather us make a deal in the next week or two to solidify the defense rather than wait, because I think we need to do that in order to be flirting with a wild card spot. But anyways, dude, I think we're in a really good position. He moneyballed the players that he brought in. I think there are some upgrades, subtle upgrades, marginal upgrades, but you know, it's not downgrades. So I mean, it's kind of hard to say you're not pleased. I mean, we did not hand out a ton of money, and that alone is a win.
Yeah, everything that you just said, I do have a lot that I have to say about that when it comes to how much cap we have left, the way that this roster is fully constructed right now, because like I mentioned at the start of this, you could build a team with this current roster right now, and you can go into it and just say, okay, here it is. Here's the paper. Here are the players. This is what we're going to ice, right? But I would love to actually re-adventure that when we talk about more about what Steve needs to do next. So going over to James Van Riemsdyk over on the left side, this is a guy you signed for 1 year, $1 million, right? And it correlates with what you just said, right? You didn't cap strap. You're not going out and you're signing players to long-term deals, right? And you actually played it very well. James Van Riemsdyk, this is someone that you could have seen with the Red Wings actually a few years ago. It didn't transpire by any means, but at age 36, shoots left, 6'3", 207 pounds. He's a big, stocky boy. So that whole entire third line, like we mentioned, they're going to be pretty big. They're going to be beefy. And it's almost going to be your checking line, right? Your hitting line, your enforcing line. But JVR this past season, 71 games, 16 goals, 20 assists for 36 points. And you signed him for $1 million. Granted, he's 36 years old, but $1 million for a potential of 30 to 40 points. That's a steal. That's highway robbery. And that's kind of the things that we asked of Steve to do. I believe it was last episode, to go out and find those players in free agency that you can bring in on the cheap that can still put up really good points. And this is another player that honestly, I believe could be a fixture in the top six if the opportunity comes knocking to him, right? And then I do believe that Steve Yzerman may have mentioned, and it may have been Coach Lalone, so pardon me if I'm speaking out of reference here, but this is a player that can play up and down in the lineup. This is someone who's a vet in the NHL. This is a former 60-point player back in 2016-17, right? 29 goals, 33 assists for 62 points in 82 games for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but he really wasn't a scrub for the Philadelphia Flyers either. He's just kind of been bounced around ever since then. He was with the Boston Bruins in 23-24, and then most recently with the Columbus Blue Jackets. So this is a guy who is just looking for opportunities to showcase that he can still play out there. And I do believe that he can still go out there and be a serviceable player for the Detroit Red Wings, not only on 5-on-5, but on the PK as well. So I love this. I love this contract. I love what JVR can bring for the Detroit Red Wings. Your overall thoughts, Carla?
I'm into it too, man. I'm honestly into it too. It's really no risk. I really don't see the risk. It's $1 million for a year. Obviously, there's some performance bonuses. I think it's like 750 grand in performance bonuses in there as well. And honestly, I hope he gets it. I hope he goes and gets that, because that'll be good for us. I mean, if he can be a 40-point guy for us, that's a win at that price point. I mean, we moved out Tarasenko in his cap, and we get back James Van Riemsdyk, who last season had more points than Tarasenko. So, big body. I think he's going to be great on the power play in the net front presence area. I can't remember his name. He was an older gentleman as well, and we brought him in, and he did well on the power play. Net front, big body. What was his name?
Okay. Alex Chason.
That's who I'm thinking about. I think he's going to be. I think I compare JVR to Chason, but a little better, a little more skill, and hopefully he can perform well on the power play. I think that's going to contribute a lot to his point totals. But I'm eyeing JVR to get 40 points. And here's a hot take, hot question. I'm going to throw it to you guys right now. Next season, you got JVR with the Wings. You got Vladimir Tarasenko with Minnesota. Who gets more points? Drop it in the comments. Zach, if you have a thought, I'd love to hear it. But folks, put it in the comments. I want to hear from you. Who gets more points next season?
I'll let the folks put out the hot takes. I got a couple this episode that I'll save for the folks at home.
Bingo.
But yeah. I mean, that's a guy who loves to get in front of the net, loves to get in the dirty areas, right? And like you said, that's something that we could utilize on the power play as well. Did we have a top power play? Yeah, but you always want to try and see what you can do to make it better, right? And so you want to carry that over into this season, especially for a team that looked terrible on the 5-on-5 and terrible on the PK. So
yeah.
Goals are welcome here in Detroit, right? We want to score more goals, but we also want to stop them too. So hopefully he can stop both on that front. So let's move over to Jacob Bernard Docker, who essentially should be Carlo. I don't know why he wouldn't be, but he should be the Justin Hall replacement for that third pair right-handed D side. Yeah. He comes in at the age of 25 years old. He's 6 foot tall, 100. He was actually with the Ottawa Senators. He was in that Dylan Cozens trade. Cousins. You guys always give me flack for saying it wrong, so go ahead and roast me in the comments once again for that. And then he just didn't get qualified by the Buffalo Sabres, and a lot of Sabres fans were pissed about that, and rightly so. I don't blame them. I mean, with the Ottawa Senators back in 23-24, he put up 14 points, 4 goals, 10 assists, 72 games played, and then the Buffalo Sabres only 8 points, 2 goals, 6 assists for 40 games played. Overall, Carlo, like I said, I mean, this is your Justin Hall replacement. He comes in super young. You know that he's a right-handed shooting defenseman, right? So that's your third pair guy right there. You can get him to play PK. We'll just have to wait and see if he gets any power play opportunity. I wouldn't suspect that he does, but
I don't think so.
He's the player that comes in cheap at $805,000, and if it all works out very well, you extend him or you trade him. You probably could get something for a JBD, to be honest with you. And it goes back to, like I said, a lot of Buffalo Sabres fans were pissed because that's a team that surely could have used more right-handed D shooters, because they have the Bowen Byrams, they have the Dahlins, and they have the Owen Powers. So, yeah, I'm very happy about this. I think that this is a fine replacement for Justin Hall. Now we just got to wait and see what happens with Justin Hall and Erik Gustafsson, who currently right now is still slated on the Detroit Red Wings 23-man roster, so to say, who would hit the ice. But your overall thoughts on a J?
I'm into it. As long as he doesn't get out-muscled by Cole Caulfield in front of the net, that's a win. That's what I go back to, man. That replays in my mind way too often, but I'll take it. I really didn't know much about him coming into the trade, like when they announced it. Then obviously he came in, I started looking into his just his numbers and whatnot, and again, just some fan feedback, and it seems like he's just another one of those guys who might have that dog in him. I haven't seen it personally, but based off of fan reactions, that's kind of the sense I'm getting. But eager to watch him to see what he's all about. I just hope it's not like a Justin Hall 2.0, but I mean, it really, at his contract and his term, it can't be. But one thing I'll mention about these additions, I think that if they all do well, they're all very tradable assets. And I think that's another thing that Steve Yzerman was very careful about with his signings.
Wait, hold on. You're still jumping ahead. Hold on. What you just said there. Yeah. I mean, the worst case scenario is that it doesn't work out with a JBD and he ends up being let's say another Justin Hall, right? But that's something you can dump $175,000, right? Where another team may want to pick him up, where we've seen with Justin Hall, he's gone through waivers. No one wants to pick him up,
What's the
especially
deal,
with
dude?
that
Yeah,
contract, right? So
exactly.
it's a different side of the sword that you're doing it based on the low risk potential of what JBD can do for you on that bottom pair, especially if he is paired with someone like an Albert Johansson or an Eric Gustafsson. We're going to have to wait and see, but that's currently what it's looking like right now. And moving over to Ian Mitchell, he is the final free agent signing from the Detroit Red Wings, and he was actually the first one who came about. Ian Mitchell, 26, right-handed D, 6 foot tall, 192 pounds. Says here that on the depth chart, he can be your RD3. I would assume that this is a player who's going to come in and try to challenge as the 7th defenseman for this team. That or he just goes down to Grand Rapids, right? But this past season with the Boston Bruins, he only got to play 15 games, 1 point, right? 215 minutes total. The season before, same thing, 13 games, 2 points, right? So this is just depth. This is a depth signing. And if you look at the Grand Rapids Griffins, they really don't have too many right-handed D shooters. They did end up extending Tuomisto. You obviously have ASP, so that adds more depth down there. So worst case scenario, he starts out there. Maybe best case scenario, if you want to call it that, it might be worst case scenario to you. He might have to be your 7th D with the Detroit Red Wings. There's really not too much more that you can speak on this type of player other than back in 2021 in the 39 games with the Chicago Blackhawks, he put up 7 points. 22-23, he put up 8 points. So he can be a sub 10-point player if the opportunity comes knocking once again for this type of player, Carlo. But your overall thoughts on an Ian Mitchell?
Yeah, I don't really have too many. I don't expect him to be on the wings at all. I think he's going to be in GR pretty much the whole season, barring injuries. I think our 7th D-man is going to flirt between Gustafsson, Bernard Docker, and Justin Hall. It'll probably be Justin Hall, but those are the 3 guys that I look at that are going to be kind of floating in and out of the press box. I think Ian Mitchell goes and stays. Sorry, I think he stays in GR. Hey, unless he blows the doors off, which I hope he does, to challenge for the spot, like you said, which is always a possibility. Maybe he does that. But I think he's going to ride out in GR and probably do well. I think he'll do well there.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Let's move over to some of the other signings that happened that we never really got to talk about because of everything else that was going on. So back on June 3rd, Jesse Kiskinen signs his entry-level contract. It was a 3-year, $923,000 cap hit on that. The Detroit Red Wings also signed a goalie back on June 11th, Michael Postova, for 2 years, $975,000 cap hit. Antti Tuomisto, like I mentioned, he was re-signed for 1 year, $813,000. So that's that right-handed D as well. William Lagesson coming back for another 2 years. The man who literally didn't get to play any hockey last season, it seems like, Carlo. It's pretty remarkable that a player would be willing to sign a deal with a team that gave him next to no opportunity. He played 7 games with the Detroit Red Wings. He got 1 point. I don't even think that he got to play with the Grand Rapids Griffins at all. So this is a guy who's going to be challenged for that 7th spot, like we mentioned. But this is depth right here. It's not anything special. This is where it gets very interesting. Albert Johansson signs a 2-year, $2.25 total value contract. So $1.125 million cap hit every year. Albert Johansson, he's not a top 4D in our eyes as much as we want him to be, but he will be our top 4D in our hearts this season, Carlo. Coming in at 6 foot tall, 185 pounds, shoots a lot, but more than likely will probably be put on that right side. And based on what Puckpedia has, they have him paired on that second pairing with Simon Edmondson. And I don't hate it, only because that's how they played together in Grand Rapids. So we could see some magic with that. Now, a lot of fans are saying, but you have Ben Sherratt playing on that top pair still. That's for Steve to figure out. And honestly, Ben Sherratt, he really didn't have that bad of a season last year. He went very unnoticeable. And for a defenseman, that's a good thing. Did you notice him?
That's fair.
Yes, you also noticed him. Do we want him to do more? Absolutely. He needs to use that body more and being more of a grinder and getting
Yeah.
his nose up into the faces and start licking people. I won't let it go. I
No,
wanted the face licker. I
no,
want someone
no
on this team to lick
licking.
faces.
Not licking. But I do agree. He does need to play with a little more bite and a little more edge. I think he has that in him, and we've seen it before in spurts. If he could figure out a way to do that full time, man, I think he could really be tough to play against. And he could be a menace out there. But I think he would be even better deeper in the defensive group, as we all probably do. So I don't know, man. It's gonna be interesting to see what Stevie does there. But Eljo and Simon, honestly, they looked good together last season. They didn't look bad. You got to remember their age; like they're still young. So even I know they made a couple mistakes. Like they're young. It's accounted for. It's better than watching Petrie, Sherratt, and Gustafson making mistakes. I'll take those mistakes every day of the week. But I'm excited to see another year of Eljo playing with Simon and getting that top 4 role. But Ben Sherratt, I'm just not sold, brother. I'm just not sold on him on the top pair.
And for him, it's good for the Red Wings and good for the player, right? You got over $1 million per year, right? You're going to be making some pretty good money. For the Detroit Red Wings, if that is their plan to make him their top 4D, that is the greatest contract you could have gotten for a top 4 defenseman, because you look at some of the players that got signed.
Yeah.
Gavrikov, 7x7. Dmitry Orlov, 2x6.5. Cody Ceci, 4x4.5. Ken Holland, you are still kicking the tires.
Is Kenny all right? Can we someone let me know, is Ken Holland okay?
Blink twice if you're not. Blink twice. I just blinked like 5 times because I'm not.
That's crazy. What are you doing? Yeah. What are we doing here, Kenny? Goodness gracious. Anyways, I don't know. Some of these deals were I'm just glad we stayed away from these deals.
Brian Dumoulin. I mean, he even signed a $3x4 million deal. Nate Schmidt, 3x3.5.
I don't hate
a player that
Nate
we
Schmidt,
really wanted is Nick Perbix.
Yeah.
He got 3x3.5. I would have given them that, to be honest with you. And this will all correlate as we go deeper into this episode, because I also want to touch on this when we get deeper into it, on what the overarching idea that Steve Yzerman went into and how he maybe looks at it going into trade deadline, right? And so, Carlo, I mean,
it's honestly,
it hurts.
It does, and it's hard to look at this and envision this being the opening night roster. It really is tough. That's why I really do think that there is something coming. There has to be something coming via trade, whatever, whenever. It's just tough to look at this depth chart and, like I said, envision that on the ice opening night. So we will see. But one notable mention that I wanted to bring up was Carter Mazur is weighing in at, I believe he's 200 pounds, if not a little bit more than 200 pounds. So he had a huge offseason. He might not be a sheet of glass anymore. Fiberglass, maybe. We'll see. A little bit stronger. Won't shatter. But I am excited to see a year of Carter Mazur at over 200 pounds. That's big. That's a big offseason. Good for him. And hopefully his injury healed up well too. So Carter, if you're watching, we're pumped to see you, buddy. Way to put on those pounds. Eat a steak, eat some pasta, get it done.
Now let's move over to Yanni Burgers, who, Carlo, I think we should... What's the word I want to use here? We should small smack ourselves, because Jonathan Berggren, we placed him in any kind of trade we could, because we figured that this was a very expendable player. It still very well could be. I mean, he just signed a 1-year deal, $0.825 million. First, I want to ask you, what do you think about that cap hit? I think it's a little rich.
It is a little rich, but hey, folks, welcome to the new cap. 1.825 is pretty much the new 1.25. And back to Eljo for a second, 1.125 is the new 875 or 975,000. Like, this is just the world of new cap. I mean, this cap's going to be going up a ridiculous amount. 1.825 is nothing, dude. Nothing to even look at, nothing to worry about. It's still extremely tradable, which I'm sure you're going to get into later. I got no beef with it. I just hope that Berggren is placed very well in this lineup to be who he is. We saw him play on the top line with Larkin and Raymond at the end of last season. He was producing. The whole season leading up to that, he was in the bottom 6, not producing. That's because our bottom 6 was not talented. There was zero skill there. So I want to see who he's placed with. I wouldn't mind seeing him with a JVR, to be honest with you, to see what they could come up with. JVR is a very experienced guy. with I think some skill in him. It'd be really interesting to see what he could do with a guy like JVR to round out that bottom six. Yeah, so we'll see. But I like his deal. It doesn't hurt at all. It's a 1 year, 1.825. I got no problem with that. Zero.
Yeah, he comes in at the age 24. He can play both right and left wing, 5'11", 194 pounds. This is a player that I don't know if you would consider this his sophomore season, Carlo, but I guess you can. His first season with the Red Wings, 67 games, 15 goals, 13 assists for 28 points. 23-20. It was that weird season where they had him play mostly in the AHL. He completely killed it. And he was a half a point per game player, 12 games, 2 goals, 4 assists for 6 points. Then this season, it's the season where a lot of Red Wings fans, dare I say it, flashes of Filip Zadina almost, maybe a little bit better, but still not on par of what we were expecting out of him in 75 games, 12 goals, 12 assists for 24 points. But this type of player coming in at that cap hit, that is a bottom six player for you. This is a more than stomachable deal, right? I hate to do this to people as well. Do you know who else signed a $1.825 million contract with the Detroit Red Wings?
I bet you're going to tell us.
Filip Zadina back in 2022.
Same
AAV. It was a 3-year deal, though. So maybe Steve Yzerman wised up a little bit and wanted to only offer him 1-year deal. But I think that this is the perfect opportunity for Jonathan Berggren. It's a prove-it deal, right? It's that one bridge, I guess if you want to call it a bridge contract, but it's a prove-it deal contract for him. Like, we're going to give you some sort of money. Here's the money. It's over $1.5 million. You're still going to make decent amount of money. You have to be closer to a 35 to 40 point guy if the Detroit Red Wings want to keep retaining him. If not, this is a player that I can see come trade deadline. If you wanted to make an upgrade somewhere, Jonathan Berggren more than likely would be included in that deal. Thoughts on that, real?
I think, and I don't want to steal your thunder, you already talked about this, but I think every single person that came in is somebody that can be packaged into a deal.
Correct.
Which is very smart. I think it's very smart, but we all want Berggren to do well. I think Berggren's a fan favorite, man. Yanni Berggers, he's a fan favorite, and we all get super pumped when he scores because a lot of his goals are really well placed. He picks his corners, and they're nice. They're nice goals, nice shots, some quality there. But Yanni Berggers needs better people next to him, man. He really does. He needs a better supporting cast, and JVR and Appleton, are they a better supporting cast? I don't know. Skill-wise, maybe JVR better than Tarasenko. Maybe he's got a little more drive. Appleton, again, we talked about him, that dog. I think he just hounds the puck. He's really, really hyper on that puck. Does that create space and time for Berggren to do what Berggren does? Maybe. I don't even know if Berggren's going to play with him because they're both technically going to be playing on the right wing. But like you said, Berggren could slot over to left wing. So who knows, dude? Way too early to even predict what this lineup looks like. But I'm happy for Berggren. I'm happy to see him here for a year. I hope last year was his sophomore slump. And I hope that this year he can get it going, get it figured out wherever he is placed in the lineup. But you know what? I mean, like I said earlier too, like he did well on the top line with Larkin and Raymond. I would not mind seeing him start the season with Larkin and Raymond. Why not? He was doing well and he was producing. Because we still need
this
that
is the
top
type of perimeter
wing
player too that I think that the top line could actually use, because instead of allowing Dylan Larkin or Lucas Raymond to kind of be that facilitator who passes the puck and waiting for someone to finish, that could be someone like Jonathan Berggren, especially if he goes into this offseason and works more on that perimeter play where his outlets are a little bit better, his overall passing can be a little bit better and faster and quicker. And obviously you're working with someone like Patrick Kane too, who is so silky smooth with the mitts and his passing too, that you got to be able to feed off of that, right? And that's another reason why I guess we'll just go and talk about Patrick Kane, who was the next one up, who signed the night before free agency actually hit. And Carlo, we knew that this contract was going to come in with some type of performance bonuses, but we didn't think that Steve was going to be able to bring the cap hit down to $3 million.
Yeah, it was very
the
impressive.
way that he was able to manipulate the cap to work in both the favor of the team and the player, because based on the bonuses, I mean, he can reach up to $4 million in bonuses. So he has an opportunity to make $7 million this year. And that kind of goes back to players like Matt Duchene, who also took like a little bit of a pay cut, but he got a lot of money too, but with no bonuses. He may have gotten some bonuses attached to it, but the AAV overall is really high. But most comparison would be to Jonathan Taves, right? And we mentioned that if we can structure it closer to that, it's a huge win for us and the player, right? And his bonuses aren't going to be that difficult. I think based on how many games you play and then making the playoffs and X, Y, and Z as well. But this is by far, I would say, the best signing of any signing that Steve Yzerman did this offseason. Unfortunately to say that, but this is a player who came in last season, 72 games played, 21 goals, 38 assists for 59 points. You could not miss a Patrick Kane. And there were those rumors going around that other teams would be willing to sign him, but we all know that was never going to happen because of Alistair Brinkat, Archie, all this other stuff. He absolutely loves the state of Michigan. But your thoughts on this contract with Showtime?
Well, I'll start with Yzerman's, the way they constructed it. I got to give him his flowers there because the cap hit of $3 million obviously gives us a lot of flexibility, whether that be in the next week with the trade deadline, or even going into, I guess those would be it, because after next year, he's back to being a UFA. But I will touch on the construct of this one because it was very impressive. It sounds so $3 million base. We all know that total performance bonuses $4 million worth. It sounds like he's going to guarantee himself $5.5 million for sure. He plays 10 games, he gets an extra $2.5 million. He plays 30 games. After that, $2.5 million kicks in after 10. If he gets to 30, there's another 250. If he gets to 50, there's another 250. Patrick Kane has always played 50 games for the Red Wings. So I would bank on this being probably a $6 million cap hit for sure, just with his games played. And then again, you get to the playoffs. I mean, geez, there's some more money there. That one, I'm not convinced we're going to hit the playoffs. At this point in time, I'm not convinced whatsoever. So I would put Patrick Kane comfortably in that million range for sure, but he has an opportunity obviously to get to 7, and that's between 6 and 7 is based off the playoffs. So we'll see what happens there. We'll see what Steve Yzerman does with the supporting cast to make that possible. I hope it is possible, but it's Showtime, baby. He's back in Hockeytown again, and it feels great. I love Patrick Kane. You mentioned the way he passes the puck. I watched a really cool video on him last night on people mistaking Patrick Kane for being lazy when really he's just 3 steps ahead of you. Like he slows down and like, oh, look how lazy he is. But no, he's actually just waiting for that lane to open up within seconds, and he capitalized on it like a lightning bolt. Boom. Like every time, like clockwork. He's a different breed of player, and I'll take Patrick Kane on this team any day. Any day. In fact, I hope he comes back next season too, because he's just a treat to watch, and we're lucky to have him, and our young guys are lucky to have him too, like you talked about there too. So yeah, I'm pumped about it. And again, flowers to Stevie for constructing that deal, because it's very, very well done.
Yeah, Patrick Kane, is he still the way he was when he was with the Chicago Blackhawks? Obviously not. No, he's
Right.
a little bit slower, not putting up as many points as he was, but that hockey IQ just never leaves you. And the way that you mentioned it, he's always 3 steps ahead. His hands are always 3 steps ahead as well. Not only his mind, but his hands too. And the way that he just manipulates the puck and control the way that the ice flows and where everyone needs to go, and his ability to feed his teammates is just absolutely unreal. And this is an amazing contract for both the player and the organization moving forward, just basically reiterating everything you said. Now let's move on to our Lord Behemoth, Elmer Soderblom, the big 24-year-old who could play left and right wing, shoots left, 6'8", 47 pounds, signs a 2-year deal at $1.13 million. This past season in 26 games played.
Sorry, 1.13 or 1.125?
It rounded up. It's 1.125. So you caught me there.
Okay. I was just making sure. You had me worried there, because dude, that's too much money. No, I'm just messing with you.
In the 26 games played this season, he put up 4 goals, 7 assists for 11 points. That did beat his record the previous, actually 2 seasons previous ago in 21 games. The 5 goals, 3 assists for 8 points. Another bottom sixer, but you can put him on the top line, which we have seen him thrive up there as well. And that is size that we have mentioned that could be utilized in the top 6 all around, because the top 6 in general isn't the biggest, right? And sometimes you need to add those players with the grit and the size that an Elmer Soderblom could bring. This contract, it's a bridge deal. It is. That's exactly what it is. And you're banking on the fact that this player can I don't want to say Tage Thompson because I know that's what a lot of people tend to gravitate to. I'm hoping he could be more of a Michael Rasmussen that can do a little bit more. So if you can find him to be in between that Michael Rasmussen and the Tage Thompson, that's a huge win, especially coming in at this contract on the super
The
cheap.
window's
Carlo,
giant. It's a giant window.
it's a giant window named Elmer. Yes. But yeah, I'm very excited about this. I was expecting a 1 year deal, just kind of keeping it on the cheap, maybe like $1 million. I'm able to stomach the extra 125,000 on
Yeah.
top of that. The expectation moving forward is, though, that you have to put up 20 plus points now. You absolutely have to. And same situation. And I think you can include players like Albert Johansson and Albert Soderblom. These are expendable players too that you can include in trades to upgrade whatever position that you're looking to upgrade at the trade deadline, right? But expectations for this type of player, yeah, it's got to be 20 plus points coming in at a cap hit like this, Carlo. But your overall thoughts on this contract and what Elmer can bring for this team?
Hey, I got no problems with this contract. I hope Elmer continues to figure out his body, his size, his hands, and all that stuff. Because, I mean, there was a couple plays last season where his hands looked really good. His shot looked really good. And he was even a little bit deceptive, too. And I think when you're that size and you have some skill, you're automatically deceptive because, like, you're just massive. But no beef at all with the deal. 20 points would be really nice for him to get. 25 would be even nicer. Again, I don't want to jump ahead here. You know what? I'm going to wait. I got no problem with Soderblom. I love him. I love the size. I love the deal. Let's see where he slots in the lineup before we start kind of projecting how many points he can truly realistically get. We're not going to be able to do that until we see opening night roster and lineups and all that stuff, which I don't think we're anywhere near, like I've said several times. But I will pause because there's some things I wanted to add in about all these deals, but specifically this one. And I don't want to steal your thunder because I know you have something in the back pocket there that I think you should probably whip out. So go for it, pal.
Yeah, let's go ahead and just jump into everything else that happened in free agency. You know, a lot of us included, fans alike, they wanted the Mitch Marners, they wanted the Nikolai Ehlers. Mitch Marner, we didn't even have an opportunity to. Steve Yzerman spoke on that. We really didn't have an opportunity on a lot of these free agents that were going on July 1st or close to it. Mitch Marner, he ended up getting traded to the Vegas Golden Knights. And a lot of people absolutely hate that. I actually hate that. I hate that the Vegas Golden Knights are able to do this year in, year out, acquire these big name players for almost next to nothing and sign them to these long-term deals. But they're cap strapped. So there may be an opportunity for us to come in there and kind of, quote unquote, help them out, right? And take on some of the cap that they need to move in order to acquire some more players. It's going to be very interesting the way that this goes, Carlo. So it was rumored with Elliot Friedman that the Red Wings were interested in some players that actually were traded before, and those players would be Mason Marchment and Victor Arvidsson. Which I did mention in our group chat that a lot of fans were including Victor Arvidsson in trades involving the Detroit Red Wings, right? Nothing really transpired of that, but until Elliot Friedman kind of came out saying that, like, we were poking at it, talking about it. Mason Marchment, he went to Seattle, his $4.5 million contract for a 4th and a 3rd round pick. We look at the Detroit Red Wings roster right now, Carlo. We talked about how some players like a Jonathan Berggren, Elmer Soderblom, even a Marco Kasper can jump up into the top 6 and play. We don't have that currently. And so this is a player that we definitely could have utilized and could utilize right now. So looking back at it, are you a little upset that we didn't go out and get a Mason Marchment?
Yeah, I think he would have been great. I think he would have been an awesome addition to this team, and he would have gave a lot more flexibility, not only to himself, but to a couple other guys in the lineup. We have a few of those luxury guys that can jump up if they need to and play. Marco Kasper for sure is one of those guys. And he can do it with sustainability. Don't know if Elmer can do it with sustainability, though we have seen him for a few weeks on the top line. Don't know if Berggren can do it with sustainability because we've only seen him for like the last couple of games in the regular season. But Kasper, I know, has the sustainability to be able to be that luxury guy who can go up and down the lineup and play well. I think Marchment would have been a really good ad, but who knows what the fetch back that they wanted from Detroit would have been. We know what he got when the deal went from Seattle. We know what they got, but that could have been a little bit different from Detroit, maybe. I don't know. I really don't know. because I would have probably given that up. But I mean, we have a lot of picks still, pretty much all of them, I think, right? We got all of our picks. We got a lot of cap. We didn't sell off any future assets or anything like that. I'm still okay with what we've done. We didn't get Mason Marchment. Cool. We got these other guys. So we still have everything. Like, we still have everything to go and make those types of moves. So I mean, that's why I really believe that there's something else coming, and or there's just something else or another plan that they like better.
Yeah, and then Victor Arvidsson, he went to the Boston Bruins for a 2027 fifth-round pick.
Take him.
I mean, this one I probably wouldn't have been interested in as much as you. This is a player this past season, in 67 games, he put up 27 points. So I don't think he would have been a fixture in our top 6. Could you have put him there? Sure, he's a former 60-point guy, but that's years ago, right? I mean, he just put up 59 points back in 22-23 with the LA Kings. 20-goal season. There's potential there.
Yeah, but how far
However,
removed?
I look at both of these players, and it comes down to their cap being 4.5 and the $4 million, and it correlates with what you're saying, that because the Red Wings right now, they currently have, what is it? It's just north of $12 million. If you were to add one of those players, right, you're just under or right around $8 million, right? And so that kind of leaves you a little strapped if you did go out and then got a defenseman that you needed to extend. And let's just utilize Bowen Byram as an example, right? Who supposedly wants $9 million on his next deal. Is he worth something like that? Personally, to me, Carlo, no, I don't believe so. But that's the way that the cap is going right now. And looking at Bowen Byram's history, he is a Stanley Cup champion after all. And so you have to pay for players who are that young with that type of experience. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. But I do just want to reiterate this. Our social media team, they did put it out there that the Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider contracts are looking more and more beautiful as the days continue on, right? And so I don't think we're really in around where we can go out and acquire these young players and offering them a deal that's more than a Lucas Raymond, a Moritz Seider, or even a Dylan Larkin. And I'm not here tooting my own horn, because back in April, I made that tweet, right? That Steve wasn't going to overturn the roster. He wasn't going to buy out your least favorite player. He wasn't going to go out and make the sexiest blockbuster trade, right? He went out and got a John Gibson. That was absolutely fantastic. I love that he did that. Is that a blockbuster trade? No. Does it improve this team dramatically? I wouldn't use the word dramatically, but I do think that adding a John Gibson, that's going to get you an extra 3 to 5 wins. That's one of my hot takes personally.
I think that's realistic, dude. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. And then you look at some of these other players. I mean, you're going to have 5 young players again that were on last season. It's technically their first and a half season, quote unquote, right? That my other hot take is that I do believe that Marco Kasper can be a 50+ point guy this season. I really do. Based on the way that this roster is constructed, I think a lot of players can be interchangeable, like we mentioned before in previous episodes, that you're going to have the flexibility if injuries arise, right? And then all the young guys in Grand Rapids, like you mentioned Carter Mazur, if for whatever reason he doesn't make the Red Wings lineup for the opening night roster, that's someone that you can insert right away. Same thing with Nate Danielson. Maybe we see an opportunity with Amadeus Lombardi, who has looked very good down there in Grand Rapids, who also needs to put on size. There's a lot of options here for the Detroit Red Wings, but going back and talking about free agency, Carlo, Steve Yzerman really didn't have that much to work with, to be honest.
No, it was very boring. Very, very boring free agency.
Go in depth about that.
Everybody stayed home, man. Everybody stayed home. And, you know, these teams going into this season with the cap increase that there was, these teams had some money and they capped themselves out. They took advantage of that and they kept their guys at home. You know, it sounds like a lot of these guys, to be honest with you, just probably have a life already and they're not interested in moving and packing up. And you can't really blame them for that. You know, a lot of these guys that were signing were at that age where they're probably having kids and whatnot. And it's tough. Like Marner's the exception. But obviously I was watching his press conference with Vegas, and it sounds like him and his wife knew they were going to Vegas like a year ago. So, and I know they just had their first kid. So congrats to them. That's a little bit of an anomaly, but I feel like these other guys, and I'm just speculating here, but I feel like these other guys stayed home. They didn't really want to leave. And I'll say it. I hate to say it, but it really doesn't sound like Detroit's that destination that players are chomping at the bit to go to. yet.
I mean, do you really blame free agents, though? Because the Red Wings, let's be honest, I mean, 9 years of not making the playoffs, would you really be interested in going? If you're a top player like a Mitch Marner that has missed out on opportunities to even make it to a conference final, why would you want to go to a Detroit Red Wings team that hasn't made it, right?
Well,
Because
I
every
mean,
other team's going to give you what they can offer you.
exactly. And you got to, and then at that point, when you have offers on the table, you're weighing, okay, which one's closer to the cup? Obviously, Vegas is closer to the cup. But, the other part of it, and maybe this is just me, but like, dude, you know how crazy it would be if you kind of looked at it as, man, I want to go to the Wings and help them get back to the playoffs because that place rocks when they're playing postseason hockey. So if I could be part of the solution of getting Hockeytown back into the playoffs, I'm going to be a rock star in Detroit. And you know how Detroit fans and the city of Detroit treats their rock stars. Look at the Lions, look at the Tigers. Like the city of Detroit just absolutely amplifies you on a crazy level. And I think players need to look at that as well. If there's if there's no offers on the table from a team that's closer to the cup. But it's hard to even say that though, because Patty Kane, he keeps choosing Detroit. Alex DeBrincat made it so that he could only be traded to Detroit. So
Kyle Connor.
Hey,
ask for
and
a
you know
trade to
what,
Detroit.
dude? Listen, that's a whole other conversation because that's the other angle, and I wanted to talk about this, and hopefully now's a good time.
Sure, lay it out there.
What if we're saving this cap for Kyle Connor at some point this season?
If you haven't already, go ahead and look at the free agents that are going to be heading into free agency next season. It's going to be a bumpy roller coaster ride, right? I mean, and you look at, I guess just speaking from a Kyle Connor's perspective, what did the Winnipeg Jets do this offseason? They added Jonathan Taves. Ooh, sweet. Okay.
You know what's crazy
cool.
with Winnipeg? Just a fun fact. I think 3 of their RFAs all went to arbitration. I don't know what that means, but I thought that was interesting because literally every single one of them went. But listen, as we've seen with Nick Ehlers, Winnipeg has a tough time extending their UFAs, like their rock star UFAs. And I don't even know if Ehlers is considered a rock star, but I can tell you for certainty that Kyle Connor is. Michigan boy, right? And it would be pretty badass if he was figuring out a way or trying to come to Detroit. And I would welcome him here, and I'm sure we all would, with very big open arms, like wide open arms.
I mean, let's be honest, right? Would a Kyle Connor want to extend with a team that has to insert? This is just a mock lineup based on what Daily Faceoff has. They have Gustav Nyquist as their top six right wing on the second line.
Yeah, that's rough.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, no disrespect to Gabe Velarde. He's a very good player, but he's on their top line, right? Young player. Then you got Cole Perfetti. This team is getting younger. They've been doing that for quite some time. So does a Kyle Connor want to be going to a team for another 6 to 8 years if he would extend with them? Does he want to go through basically what Ilya Sorokin now has to go through with the New York Islanders? Right?
Yeah.
Mark Scheifele isn't getting any younger. Like I just mentioned, you just inserted a Jonathan Taves who hasn't played hockey in 2 seasons, who's going to be your 2C ahead of a Nemesnikov, right? So I do see a world where Kyle Connor does want to come home. Do I foresee him asking for a trade? I don't think so. I think it's more than likely that he hits free agency. And I do think that there is a higher probability that he would come to Detroit. Do I think that the money that we're saving now would be directed to him? I wouldn't go as far as that, but a lot of this money can be utilized towards him for sure.
The reason I said that is, are we saving a little bit of this money for a Kyle Connor trade, is because when it would be in Winnipeg's best interest to trade him.
100%.
Obviously, if they know, or if the contract extension talks, they're not going anywhere, they're not happening, whatever, I would look for, at some point, a Kyle Connor trade. That's one to keep an eye on, because I really do have a feeling he is going to end up in Detroit. Call me very optimistic and very wishful thinking, because I agree. I totally am. But for some reason, I don't know why, but I just see a Kyle Connor, Detroit Red Wing connection. So that's my future prediction right here, folks. Calling it now. Mark it in the books.
Wait.
You got more?
Wait. They have 2 Michigan boys on that team. All right, mock trade right here. Off the cuff, off the ripper. John Gibson, Michael Rasmussen. Give them Buchelnikov and your 2027 first round pick for Kyle Connor and Connor Hellebuck. Terrible trade. Off the cup, off the riff.
Who says no?
Probably Winnipeg.
Yeah, they hang up the phone immediately.
Yeah, well, in my dream, in my la la land, they accept. So Connor Hellebuck, Kyle Connor, you guys are Detroit Red Wings, and they come with extensions on top of that for like $5 million each. Why not?
Hellebuck signed until 2030.
Oh, there you
8.5
go.
million. That's a pretty big. That's a big one. Was he 37
Yeah.
when he's done? 36, 37? 37?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and let's talk about that too, because the way that this roster is constructed, you were kind of getting into like trade deadline talks and everything. So I wanted to kind of keep you on your toes a little bit with that, because we know what this next draft entails. You have Gavin McKenna and some other strong names
big one
up there in the draft upcoming for 2026, right? We mentioned how there's a lot of players on this team now that you just added or re-signed that can be expendable come trade deadline. I'm not saying or hoping that this happens. In the worst case scenario, the Detroit Red Wings just have a terrible, absolutely terrible season, or just injury-ridden season, right? You have players that you can go out and trade and get good quality assets for. Maybe not in the 26 trade, but maybe in 27. You can recoup what you spent to acquire a John Gibson in there, right? Go into the draft and you get a top 10 pick, maybe top 5 potentially, right? So there is that route here. But Carlo, I don't want fans to get deterred based on this roster, right? Because I do believe, and Steve has to look at it from this perspective too, is that do I go out and make a trade and give up futures for the now, and now being the next maybe 3 to 5 years, whatever you're giving up those futures, you probably don't see them for another 5 to 7 years.
Depends on the year.
Are we ready as an organization and fan base to accept that we are in a situation where we have to compete with teams like the Montreal Canadiens, who added a Noah Dobson? You look at the Florida Panthers, you look at the Tampa Bay Lightnings, who haven't even done anything. Boston Bruins, who knows what direction they're going into? It looks like it's still kind of the retool situation, but more so they're tanking. Right? And then you look at the Buffalo Sabres. What in the world are they freaking doing? They want to try and stay competitive. But nonetheless, looking at all these teams that are in our division, Carlo, and even in the Metropolitan Division, to me personally, I feel like we're still kind of there where we're a bubble fringe playoff team.
Oh, yeah, dude. 100%. 100%.
Really know what direction Steve is trying to go in, where, yes, I understand you want to be competitive, and that's the business aspect of it, but I can see a reality where it goes one or two ways yet again. And I think I said this last season. It's either we make the playoffs or we just really let it go, right? But under a new system with Tom McClellan and Trent Yanni, I have really high expectations now. If there is a situation where the Detroit Red Wings just completely fall underneath themselves, do you say bye to Steve Yzerman? Do you say bye to Tom McClellan? What happens next? Do you just kind of say, okay, we're going to go into another mini rebuild? Or is it just one of those situations where we did so bad that it helped us out in the draft, and now here we are, we're getting a top 3 pick, and now all of a sudden we can go out and acquire these top free agent players because we just added a top 3 talent in the draft who can come in maybe right away. And inserting, it's almost kind of like the New York Rangers, where that one weird year where the New York Rangers got Artemi Panarin, and then they got the first overall pick, then they got the second overall pick. I know I just kind of went into a whirlwind, and you probably have your own thoughts that you want to say, but your thoughts on basically what I just said, and then include whatever you were going to say.
Yeah, I wouldn't put much stock into this lineup yet. I think there's something else that's going to happen that's going to make this a little bit better. But if we were to go into the season as is, I do see us being very similar to where we were last year, where we're flirting with, like I said, we're flirting with wild card 2. Barring injuries, obviously if injuries pop up, that's the part where it's unfortunate with this current construction, is that it's very fragile. Larkin or Raymond go down, we're not winning games.
Seider as well.
Seider goes down.
To miss a game, and that's my biggest fear there, buddy.
Yeah, we're not winning games without those guys. Like, those guys keep us in it game in, game out. So it's pretty fragile still. That's why if we do go into the season with this one, everything needs to go right. And we are still, if everything goes right, we're flirting with wildcard 2. Again, optimistic thought there. But Yeah, I mean, it's tough to predict anything right now. It's so early. I hate doing this early on because it's like even with lineups and stuff, it's just like the offseason literally just started 6 days ago. And then the 4th of July weekend comes in, like people need to take breaks, especially after draft and then UFA. So I would expect things to ramp back up this coming week to see what's going to happen with how things shake out, which is going to be fun for us a week from today to review if there is anything that pops through. But yeah, dude, I really don't have much more on it because it's just too early. Like it's too early, and I think that yeah, I said what I said, and I'm standing by that for right now. That's where I'm at.
I also said what I said, and I agree with you, honestly. Yeah, it's a little too early to be making these speculations, but those are thoughts that you have to think about, right? That, if a Sider, if a Larkin, if a Raymond go down, it's going to be very tough for us to stay
Oh yeah,
competitive
dude. Oh yeah.
within our division, within our conference overall. In the NHL, it's going to be very difficult, right? But, Carlo, let's shift focus onto some of these teams that are so cap strapped that
Yeah.
it's like, what in the world are you guys doing, and how are you going to figure this out? Vegas Golden Knights minus $6.81 million of cap space, and I know that they put Pietrangelo out on LTIR, so that technically has not taken into account yet.
Yep.
But their projected cap hit right now is $102 million, just a little above that. Same thing with the Montreal Canadiens. They're over $5.42 million. They have a full active roster of 23 players, where the Golden Knights, they still need 2 more players. The Panthers, 22
Well,
man
hang on.
roster.
Montreal's got Carey Price going on
That as well. Yep.
10.5 million, so they're going to be fine.
So good call out on that. Then you look at the Panthers. They're minus just about $3 million. They still need 1 more player, right? Dallas Stars, they still need 1 more player. They're just under over $2 million. Edmonton Oilers, they finally have a full roster. They have $176,000 left. The Tampa Bay Lightning, $1.18 million left with a 23-man roster. But this is the most intriguing. The Colorado Avalanche, with 21 players signed, and they have $4.12 million. But Carlo, overall, with all these teams, who are you targeting the most, and which players are you going to go after? Because to me, I keep going back to Dallas and
Yeah.
Jason Robertson. It's that, or you look at the Vegas Golden Knights and you try to pry away players like Barbashev, maybe a Thomas Hurdle. I don't really like how long his contract is and that age, but that is someone, maybe even a William Karlsson. If you can get a William Karlsson to play as your 2C and bump Marco Kasper up on the top left wing, or do the same thing with William Karlsson, put him on the top left wing.
So
There are options here, but what are your thoughts? Which teams are you main focused on, and which players are you hyper focusing on?
so Dallas, it's Robertson. And I'm just looking at teams that are cap strapped. For Dallas, it's Robertson. For Vegas, I like Thomas Hurdle a lot. I really like Thomas Hurdle a lot. So I was looking at him on Vegas. Barbashev, I was looking at him as well. Both those guys can play center or wing. So I really like the idea of having that luxury again, having guys that can play a couple different positions and move up and down the lineup. That'll help us tremendously should Larkin or Raymond go down, or one of these studs that we have go down. The other person I was looking at who is a right-handed shot, which I don't know if they would even consider this, considering with Pietrangelo out, who's a right-hand shot. The next right-hand shot on Vegas is Zach Whitecloud, and he carries a 2.75 cap hit until 27, 28 years old. I was looking at that guy because he's a right-handed shot for more reasons than not. I mean, that's why I looked at him in his name. So there's that, but that's pretty much it for Vegas. But I do think that they got to do something. They got to figure something out. But yeah, so wrap it up. I was looking at Hurdle, I was looking at Barbashev, and I was looking at Zach Whitecloud. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, all those players. Yeah, all those players. I'm not sure about Zach Whitecloud. I mean, you kind of just mentioned it, right? I don't think that they would be in the realm to shift off a right-handed defenseman when they just placed their top one on LTIR.
They do have another one. They do have a third right-handed shot, but he's
Caden Korzak.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but it comes down to this. Like, I kept on saying, do we want 5 left-handed defensemen playing on our defense, right? And so Vegas has to ask that same question too. And I think it would work out more for Vegas than it would for us, considering how deep they are on their forward end.
Yeah,
I mean, the names on this roster right now: Mitch Marner, Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, Thomas Hurdle, William Karlsson, Ivan Barbashev for Pete's sake, holy schmoly. And they got Alexander Holtz, who I don't know how they're going to sign him. I would very be interested in acquiring maybe an Alexander Holtz if there is an opportunity there. I think there actually is a lot of unseen potential from an Alexander Holtz. He was a former high draft pick, a first round 7th pick overall back in 2020. And he's only 23 years old. So I think that there is some opportunity there with him, and he shoots right. So my main focus is still on Jim Nill and the Dallas Stars. It's got to be Jason Robertson. And I think that there's more flexibility there between the two teams, not only on the familiarity side of Steve Yzerman and Jim Nill. I think that both teams have what each wants, right? Dallas needs players that are coming in cheap. If they don't want to recoup players in a trade, then you can give them picks and then they can call up some of the players from their farm system, their AHL team, right? But it keeps going back to Jason Robertson. That, or they end up trading Rupe Hintz or Wyatt Johnson. It's got to be one of those three players.
I mean, I don't know if they're going to trade Hintz because he's kind of their center, like their main centerman, right? And I don't know if they would move him, and he's locked up as well. I think Robertson is probably their and that's why his name's been out there. I think he's the most tradable guy, and they know that on the team. And the thing is that they have a lot of leverage with him, and they're not going to just take a knee, and take scrubs. They're not going to do that. And I'll go back to what I wanted to say earlier with Detroit is, we don't really have enough assets to go and make a deal for Robertson. We just don't. We have a lot of players with some potential that can turn into assets that could maybe be enough in a package to fetch back a Robertson. But at this point in time,
that's basically all you got.
They're not those guys yet.
Yeah, no. And sorry to cut you off there. That's basically all we have is the hope, the projection of what these players could potentially be, right? And something like the Dallas Stars, you got to think, like, if you were Jim Nill, do I want in return players that I don't really know what I'm going to get out of quite yet, right? Because we haven't even seen that ourselves. So why would someone like Jim Nill want that? Unless he sees something that Steve Yzerman might not see, but that's on Steve Yzerman to obviously sell it too, right?
Totally.
And it would still come down to the cost. Are you willing to sacrifice futures of, I'm just going to throw out names here, Nate Danielson. I do think Nate Danielson would be involved in a trade if you were to go out and get a Jason Robertson. Do I like saying that? Absolutely not. But with the latest draft pick, which I was very unfamiliar that Carter Bear could play center, maybe that's something the Red Wings see down the line, right? And you can always draft another center, especially with this upcoming draft. I think the draft is going to be so deep that maybe you'll be able to pry out a center from there. But considering that you already have Dylan Larkin and Marco Kasper, you have Andrew Kopp, you have JT Compher. The Andrew Kopp and JT Compher, unfortunately, are tied up for the next 1 to 2, 3 years. Yeah. There's really not a spot for Nate Danielson in here. And that's quite unfortunate. And I do believe that if you were the Dallas Stars, I got a third line center spot that I could open up for Nate Danielson within a year or two. Just kick Sam Steele out of there. And then you could play alongside with Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, whenever they keep on signing up, right? I just think that that's the route that you would need to go to acquire a Jason Robertson or really any other player that is as prominent as this, personally to me. And that's including, you would have to include some first round picks and maybe some other sweeteners on top of that, right?
You would have to most certainly include some first round picks. And if you're including Danielson, I think Dallas is going to want a ready now player too. And I don't know which ready now player we have that we're all okay with parting with, that can solve that puzzle. We don't want to part with Kasper. I don't think anybody wants to part with Kasper. He's unreal. So that's what they're going to probably ask for back, plus Danielson, plus a first round pick for a guy like Robertson, right? But does Berggren have an unreal year? Like, if Berggren had an unreal year last year, Berggren could be the answer. Berggren, and Danielson, first round pick, Jason Robertson. But Berggren didn't have a great year last year. He didn't blow it up. The only person that did is Marco Kasper, and we don't want to part with him. So it's timing is just not on Detroit Red Wings' side with their prospect pool, who have turned into players that are on the team today. That's the situation we're in. You know, we all can sit here and package up all these deals and play the GM role of, oh, who says no and this and that and deal or no deal. But at the end of the day, it's timing. Our guys have just not come to play yet. They're still developing. Whether you want to admit it or not, whether you want to hear it or not, it's the truth and it's the reality. You know, you're not trading Danielson and a first-round pick for Jason Robinson. It's not going to happen, and Steve Yzerman probably would not even, out of respect, offer that to Jim Nill. So don't be offended if it doesn't happen. I think after this season, if we see some guys take some steps, and that's why I think you hear Stevie Y and these guys in the administrative roles keep saying we need these guys to take steps, not only to make the team better, but also to make our trade returns better too, because they truly do need to make steps for themselves, their own professional development, but they also need to make steps so that we have a little more ammunition to go and play with in the trade market. Because right now we got nothing. We got guys that we don't want to part with until these other guys start to catch up. Soderblom, I would trade him, but who wants him? He didn't have a crazy year. He's 6'5". That's all he's got going for him, 6'6", whatever he is. But if he takes a big step this year, he could be a trade candidate. Berggren, Carter Mazur, all these young guys that Stevie Y's plopped into this lineup, or even these guys that Stevie Y's drafted, coming into the lineup, start producing. And you're either going to be higher up in our lineup or you're going to be a perfect candidate to trade and be higher up in someone else's. That's what I personally think we're waiting for. That's my final thought of this episode, and I'm flipping it right back over to you, Zach.
I think if I had to label this offseason going into this season, I would give it the title of, we're going to call it risky. Maybe that's not even the title that I would actually name it.
Go with your original.
Risky.
I want to know what your original was for a second here. Hang on a second.
I guess my original was going to be like, it's the hopes and dreams off season going into the season, where we talked about it, where it's all about this potential. What can these players do? We kind of mentioned the Albert Johanssons. We talked about the Jonathan Bergers. We talked about the Elmer Soderbloms, the Marco Kaspers. How much of a bigger step can they elevate this team and themselves and their careers in the National Hockey League, right? And so that's why I label it that title, is because I think Steve is trying to bank on, and it's kind of like how you mentioned, can these players have bigger roles and bigger seasons than what they did, right? And so with that, then that's going to help out the team, whether it's going to be, okay, either I see you as a trade option and I can utilize you in a package, or you're going to be a longer fixture with this team moving forward.
Correct.
Right. And so I think that we're now in the summer, and this even happened last summer. And I'm kind of now placing the two together, where Steve is slowly trying to figure out which prospects are going to work for this team in the long run and which ones are not. And he's kind of just taking those risks, where which players are going to be the ones that are going to be the dogs that stay here, because that's what he's looking for. He's looking for those dogs that are just absolute grinders, right? And we saw the way that the season ended last year with Andrew Kopp saying like, hey, people weren't putting in the work quite like they were supposed to, right? And it felt like that a lot of those players didn't feel like that they wanted to be there. And so we're going to start seeing that with a lot of these younger guys, right? And so the expectation for some of these younger guys on these bridge deals, these 1 to 2 year deals, and even some of these veteran guys, what can they do? And if it works out, great. That's fantastic. If it doesn't, Steve is ready for both sides of the coin in that regard, right? And so it can go one or two ways. It's make the playoffs or you don't. And you start trying to sell off a little bit. And that's when we start to see the players like the Nate Danielsons being full-time, maybe even the Kosas. You could trade Cam Talbot, because that is someone who can play as a backup for a regular playoff team, right? And so I think that there's a lot of opportunities here for Steve in which direction he wants to go with some of these players and the team moving forward. But at the end of the day, fans are getting reckless. If we miss the playoffs again, Carlo, I really don't know if Steve will be the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings still. And I hate to say it like that, because I do believe that, and it's kind of like the Tampa Bay situation, where when he left, a lot of us were saying, oh, that's Steve Yzerman's team. Look what he did. And they just weren't patient enough. We're going to start seeing a lot of these young guys. If Steve Yzerman was fired tomorrow, 5 years from now, are we going to be saying, these are all the guys Steve drafted and look at us, we look like idiots?
That's a good question, dude. I mean, possibly, but that's back to my whole final thought. Like, these guys are still developing. They're 22, man. They're 23. Like, they're not even close to their prime yet. Like, they're still figuring out how to get to the prime. They're on their way to their prime. So, it's so hard to answer that question because we just don't know. And I think that's the problem. Like, timing, like I said, is just not on our side right now. Like, we are losing patience as a fan base and going stir crazy, which I get it. It's warranted to a degree, but you really need to like seek to understand why we're in this position. You know, you can't expect a Moritz Seider and a Lucas Raymond to be the two guys. Yeah, are they cornerstones of this franchise? Absolutely, but they're not elite generational talent. They're not. So they're not going to be the answer. It's going to take a whole slew of draft picks to come into this team, develop, and be able to hang to really propel us into where we want to be. Does Steve Yzerman get fired after this season if we don't make the playoffs? Personally, I don't think he does. No, I don't think he does. Whether that means he should or shouldn't, I'm not going to get into that, but I don't think he will. And if he should even be thought of to be fired, I would say, based off what I just said and giving these players times to, spread their wings and fly, so to speak, I think they're giving him 10 years. I think they're giving Stevie Y 10 years. And if he doesn't make the playoffs year 10, I can comfortably be okay with him being dismissed. But I think they are going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to I think this team takes a complete massive leap after next season. The UFA crop of next year, I think, is when this team takes a massive jump. And I'm talking about a jump of being a flirting with wild card 2 spot to being in the playoffs and not a wild card team, by the way, solidifying themselves in that mix of a lock team that's not flirting with wild card. We are a lock. I think that leap's going to happen 26, 27. You heard it here first, folks. That's my final thought for real this time.
I will say, too, that the benefit of us not going out and making wild, crazy trades, quite like the Montreal Canadiens did for a Noah Dobson, is that, they're kind of in that vicinity where they're allowed to do that, right? Where they have the flexibility to do something like that. And that honestly kind of helps us out, because if we're not in that spot quite yet, then we have a lot more to tinker with and work around too, yep. Right?
We're going to have first dibs on some pretty clutch players. They're not. Like, they're going to have 2 D-men at $10 million between Hudson and Dobson. We're not going to have that. We're going to have Simon and Mo that are going to, Mo's contract looks great every single second that passes. I can only imagine what Edvinson's going to look like. We're going to have an advantage of, I would say, $4 to $5 million on our top line defense, where Montreal's probably going to be, their top line defense is going to be valued at 20 million. Ours is going to be valued at 15 to 16 when you include Seider and Edvinson's future deal. That's an advantage. We now have an extra $4 to $5 million to play with, aka first dibs on a clutch player that might come about, whether it be, I don't know, Jason Robertson, if there's a package to be made there, which I don't think there is, or going into the UFA next season. If Kyle Connor walks his way to UFA and Winnipeg, for some strange reason, doesn't trade him, if he's not going to sign there, we have an advantage. Well, we have the advantage that he's from Michigan. We got some pretty sick lakes around here, but we have the money too. You got the gusto, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So we're at an advantage. I agree with you, dude, 100%.
My final thoughts are, since Carlo said his already, I think he said it pretty much 3 times.
I kind of had 2 final thoughts. They played into each other, but they were elaborated.
So my final thoughts are, the Red Wings, I believe, it's really weird. I don't believe that they absolutely have to make the playoffs this season. I want them to. Carlo obviously wants them to. Everyone obviously wants them to. But I will actually disagree with you that I don't think that this team can make the playoffs. Could they? Yes, I do think so. But I think a lot of things have to go their way, and it has to go correctly on both sides. The Detroit Red Wings have to stay healthy, and they have to compete night in, night out. And then other teams, they have to falter, right? Injuries, all that fun stuff. But if the Red Wings don't make the playoffs again, and similar situation to this free agency, how are you going to convince players to come to your team next offseason? And you can answer it if you want, but that's what I'm going to leave for you guys, the viewers, watchers, listeners at home. If we don't make the playoffs again, how are we going to convince Kyle Connors, McDavid's, and all these other players, these top free agent players going into next season, to come and play for the Detroit Red Wings? Because like how Carlo mentioned it, I want to go to Detroit to help elevate them. I don't think players are in the mood to be doing something like that. A lot of players want what they want now. And if you want to be on a successful team, they're going to go to a successful team. And unfortunately, you say the Detroit Red Wings have not been a successful team. To us, they have. Strides, right? Ever since 2019. It's all been about strides.
Yeah.
Right now, where we're at, it's a leap. It's not a stride, it's a leap. Trying to get into that bubble playoff spot. But if you wanted to make the playoffs this season, I do think that you have to go out and make a trade, whether that's for a top 4D or a top 6
100%.
winger. If you don't do that, it's going to be very tough, especially if injuries arise. So you have to pick and choose, right? So, but I don't believe that a top free agent player like a Kyle Connor would come to Detroit if we don't make the playoffs. Personally, to me. But I want to hear from the folks, viewers, watchers, listeners at home. Let us know what you think down in the comments. We definitely appreciate you guys stopping by and joining us on this brand new episode once again. But if you haven't already, and if you made it to the tail end of this episode, hit that subscribe button.
Please do.
Hit the thumbs up button. Hit that notification bell over on Apple and Spotify. Rate us a 5 stars. Hit that follow button. Carly, you got any last thoughts before we actually go?
Hey, man, if you made it this far, definitely follow Zach's lead there and hit those buttons. You hung with us to the end. You're a real one. You're an OG. We appreciate it. And that is all I have, folks. Zach?
And until next time, we'll see y'all on the next one. See ya. Love you. Bye.